This is the Galaxy S25 Ultra and it's too good. And I got bored of it, which is why I got the Galaxy A16, which is 1/10 the price of the Ultra. Which got me thinking, how good is a phone that's worth less than a pair of AirPods? Is it 10 times worse, or are we just wasting money on these phones? Let's find out. It looks kinda premium, especially with the free cameras. If you remove your brain cells for a second, you might be fooled into thinking that this is the S25. Oh wait, every Samsung phone looks the same now, never mind. And even the plastic frame doesn't feel that much worse than the titanium on the Ultra. And immediately, I found the biggest problem with this phone. You thought I was gonna tell you? Straight away? Don't you like being edged a little bit? Anyway, when you look at the front, that's when you realize that maybe this isn't the S25. It still has the ugly teardrop from 1964. Okay, but seriously, that hasn't been a thing since like 2019. And the chin is also pretty thick, but then I remembered how ugly the Pixel 8a was, and I'm willing to forgive that. But this, I cannot forgive. Both the A06 and the previous year's A15 had headphone jacks, but the A16 doesn't. Why? Why are we just climbing down the ladder and removing headphone jacks from budget phones? Sure, if you're rich, you can buy wireless earbuds, but a $150 phone? Hello? But at least this thing still has a micro SD card. And speaking of the A06, I made a video where I used that phone for a couple of days, and this phone is actually a really good step up from that phone. You're getting an AMOLED 90Hz screen instead of a 60Hz IPS one. And you know what? Trust me when I say this, the screen is actually pretty good. Obviously, you can tell that the A16 doesn't have that anti-reflective coating that the Ultra has, so the glare is way more visible. But most phones don't even have that, and looking at it, it's actually pretty good. But how does it feel? Good morning. I have a couple of objectives for this phone today. First, I have to go out and get a fancy drink and have a walk in a park. What can go wrong? So I went outside, walked into the woods, and decided to test the camera a little bit. This phone doesn't even have 4K or even 1080p 60 FPS. What? Even the Galaxy S5 from 11 years ago has 4K. But maybe the camera actually looks pretty good. Yeah, the camera is not the best. This genuinely looks like me at the zoo footage from 2005. And zooming should be illegal on this thing. I hung out with the pigs a little bit and I didn't realize there are brown ones too. Also, it looks like I'm purposely shaking the camera, but I'm not. This is genuinely how shaky it was. It has no stabilization whatsoever. I tried zooming in on the ducks and clearly they were having a lot of fun without me. And then I found an imposter just standing there pretending to be a duck. Let's call him Walt. I tried the same thing on the S25 Ultra and obviously it was a little bit better. Just a tiny. Walt was still there, this time in 4K. Let's spam hi Walt in the comments. And then it was time to test the selfie camera. And this really surprised me. If you check online, somehow the A16 has a slightly bigger sensor, a slightly wider aperture, and an extra megapixel. How does that even happen? But this actually shocked me because if you look at the comparison, the Ultra absolutely obliterates it. I'm not surprised that it's better quality, but this just proves that the sensor size is kind of irrelevant when all of the work is being done by the processing. I noticed that this thing didn't have an inbuilt screen recorder, which meant that I had to get this third-party one, which was full of ads. Why is the screen recorder missing? Also, look how cool is this. I stuck my phone magnetically to a metal pole for this video. You know, so far the camera isn't really that bad. Yes, it's 1080p. It doesn't have any stabilization, but that's okay. The missing OIS is usually a problem, but it's a $100 phone. I can forgive that. I then found a really sketchy looking campsite and I don't like the look of it. Also, this phone has a pro mode just for photos, but it only has one wide lens, and it also doesn't have the pro video mode, which is fine because it has the fun mode. This phone isn't made for professionals, it's made for fun people. Wait, is this just basically Snapchat? What the hell? Yo. Oh. Yo. Then as I was walking to the fun drink store, I took some pictures, and if you look really close, this 10x shot looks slightly better on the Ultra. I know, I'm making some pretty dumb comparisons, but the ultra-wide sensor is horrible. They need to get rid of it. Canary Wharf is really beautiful, but it really looks like it was filmed in 2001. And we made it to the fancy store with all the Asian snacks and drinks. The choice is overwhelming. I couldn't read any of the labels, and they have live crabs? What the heck? In the end, I decided to go for this drink, and then I found myself lost in the snack section. I picked up some chips and a cake of some kind, and then it was time to pay. And unlike a lot of the other cheaper phones that I tested, this has NFC, which means I could use contactless payments. That's really nice. This phone has a pretty massive battery at 5000 milliamps, and it lasted basically just as long as the S25 Ultra. But the charging is so slow at 25 watts. Huh? I know I'm being pretty harsh, but I'm just nitpicking. And then I'll get to the good stuff, I promise. There's an app called Good Lock, which lets you customize your phone very deeply and give you like extra gestures and stuff. And of course, this phone is missing like almost all of it. Bruh. It's not a deal breaker on a budget phone, but it's still kind of sad. You're gonna be shocked when I say this, but it was kind of slow. You have to wait after almost every press and every swipe, and even stuff like camera takes a second to switch lenses. Relax, I know. I'm just saying. Also, the haptics, just listen to me type. It doesn't even have feedback after every press, it's just a continuous buzzing like an electric beard trimmer. So of course, to improve my experience, I turned off the haptics, went into developer mode and disabled the animations, and before you ask, yes, I unapologetically pissed myself. What are you gonna do? And speaking of haptics, when you search haptics in the settings, it doesn't come up with the actual search result. Unlike the Ultra, which suggests system vibrations, which means that this thing doesn't have AI search in the settings, and just any of the AI features in general, which is understandable because this phone is pretty weak and no one cares about AI. And before I get to some of the good stuff, let me tell you about the biggest problem with this phone, and that's the fingerprint sensor. Usually the power button sticks out, which makes it really easy to press, and it's very clicky. But with the A16, the power button is basically flush with the body, and it's so difficult to press, especially if you kind of miss it, because if you press right here, like, it's kind of annoying. And the sensor is so unreliable. First of all, if you just rest your finger in it, you can unlock it, but for some reason it takes ages to realize that you're trying to unlock it, and if you actually press the button, it's got like a 30% chance of failing. On GSM Arena, several people are complaining about it failing, and there's a whole page worth of Reddit posts all about it. And don't even think about using the face unlock, just use a pin code or a pattern or something. But you know what? After all the bad stuff, there's actually some good stuff to appreciate here. When I bought this phone, I actually realized that there's a newer model, the A17, which has slightly prettier looking cameras. They're the same, they just look prettier, but it was so much more expensive. And after comparing the specs, it's just a bit thinner and a bit lighter, and it's like 10% faster. That's it. Same phone, which made me realize how good the value of this phone really is. It's already 1 year old, but it will still get 5 more years of software support. I don't know how it's supposed to survive 5 more years because it's kind of slow, but technically it could survive, especially if you don't get the 4 gig model like I did. You see, I also realized there's an 8 gig model, but for some reason it's like double the price, so the RAM upgrade is worth almost as much as the phone itself. Cool. Honestly, as much as I loved complaining about this phone, it's actually pretty good, especially how cheap it is. And this phone is much better than the Galaxy A06. The screen is a massive upgrade, it's got more software support, it's a little bit faster, and it's got an ultra-wide camera. But please don't use that camera, it's horrible. And apart from the little things missing like the AI search, the inbuilt screen recorder and Good Lock, there actually isn't a major thing missing from this phone. It even has NFC. It's actually pretty good, as long as you disable the haptics, the animations, and don't use the fingerprint scanner. Not everyone can afford a flagship. For a lot of people, this is all that they can afford. And for some people, good enough is enough.